Are we up? All right. Good evening, everyone. At 6:30 p.m. My name is Michael Thome. I'm here to call to order this meeting of the Columbus Utility Commission for September 21st, 2023. I'll be leading tonight's meeting due to Sarah Motiff, the normal chair, was excused this evening, so please be patient. Thank you. First item is to call the meeting to order, which I've done, and also that the meeting has been noticed according to open meeting statutes, state statutes. And then item number 3 is to approve the agenda. Unless there's any alterations or deletions, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll move to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion from Rule, second from Brooke to approve the agenda as presented. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Agenda is approved. Made it through that. Number 4, visitors' comments and utility communications. Is there anyone present for communications? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda then. On the consent agenda this evening, we have the approval of the minutes of August 24th Commission meeting, the outage report, and number 3, the financial reports. So we'd be approving the water and light cash disbursement report and accounts payable report and the sewer purchase order register. Any discussion on any of those items in the consent agenda? All right, if there's no questions or discussion, I'll take a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion from Mayor Hammer and a second to follow. Beckman. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Well, we have to.
Oh, sorry. Oh, we have to.
Yeah,
Thank
because
you
of
again
the
for the
payments.
reminder. We'll do a roll call on that then.
Sure. Curtis.
Aye.
Rule.
Aye.
Beckman. Aye. Tome.
Aye.
Hammer.
Aye.
Handler.
Aye.
Motion carried.
All right, we have no unfinished business, so we're moving on to new business number 1. And the first item is staffing update discussion. Michelle?
So this item was actually asked to be put on the agenda by Sarah, but I can give you an update. So as you know, in the last month or so, we've hired a few new staff members. Well, since then, one of the linemen has left and has gone back to their previous utility they worked at. The municipal director has left and gone back to the community he's worked at, and we did have to let one go for not fulfilling the job description they were hired for. So within that, while the municipal director was here and talking with, I believe it was the city administrator, and were you in that conversation? I know there was a couple commissioners. So with that, Dalton was the interim lead while that position was open. He has now been promoted to that lead and has accepted it. We also, with that vacancy, we have decided that right now it's for efficiency purposes and cost savings. We won't be filling that position. We do have 2 linemen on hand. We have a 3rd apprentice that will be in his 4th year. He'll be a lineman next year. And our apprentice, which is in his 2nd year. So if we come spring and see a need, we might look at maybe hiring another apprentice, which would still be a cost savings. On a up note, the wastewater department has hired 2 new. One has started, one will start in October, and they are now fully staffed. There's a lot going on. That's all I have.
That's a lot.
Yes, it is.
Is this an ongoing discussion that we need to put on the next agenda then? I mean, as far as the superintendent's position, that's news to me, I guess.
So,
Yes. I don't know where that's at.
Lisa Wilson, our new city administrator, and I are going to be getting together next week to just discuss what she and Nick had talked about prior to his departing.
Okay.
And so whatever recommendations come out of that, and obviously bring back to commission and council,
Okay.
so.
Who did we lose? Who did we lose besides Nick?
We lost Joe, he was a recent new hire. Josh, who was also a recent new hire, and then Nick.
Okay.
Any questions or discussion on that before we move on? All right, seeing none, then we'll move on to item number 2. We have Phil Hansen, the Chief Information Officer from WPPI Energy, to present orientation to WPPI Energy and any discussion to follow. Welcome, Phil. He's passing out handouts for us.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for having me tonight.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm Phil Hansen with WPPI Energy. Out here to talk about.
Hit your talk button if you,
Oh,
there you go,
yeah,
it's on,
okay,
it's on.
we're good.
Thank you.
Here to talk to you about a little bit about WPPI and give you some updates. This is something we do every other year, come out to all the governing bodies and give you an update on WPPI. As you know, you're an owner of WPPI, and it's very important to us to keep you informed. And then alternate years, we have regional dinners to have commissions and staff out to learn about WPPI. Today's presentation is going to be called Leading with a Purpose. Something that, a theme that we've been carrying throughout this year. Flip over to the first slide here. I'll tell you a little bit about WPPI. We're your joint action agency, your wholesale power supplier. We were formed in 1980. 51 members in 3 different states. We have most of our members in Wisconsin, but some in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan and some in Iowa. Governed by a board of directors. Each city has 1 seat on the board of directors. That board of directors elects an 11-person executive committee, and they meet monthly to do our month-to-month business. The slide here says that we have a peak demand of 999 megawatts, but I should have updated that. We just hit a new peak a few weeks ago when we had a heat spell. So our peak now is about 1060. Total assets of $751 million and annual budget of $524 million. Next slide talks about our mission and our vision. As you can see, our mission has really 3 parts, and that's I'll focus on some of those 3 parts throughout these slides. To help member utilities accomplish more by working together for reliable, affordable, responsible electricity, forward-thinking services, and effective advocacy. And our vision is to have WPPI Energy members set the standard for locally owned utilities working together to help their communities thrive. And setting the standard is something I think we do show. Wisconsin, this joint action agency, WPPI Energy, is nationally known, and a lot of the services we have are looking to be replicated by other joint action agencies in other states. So I think the membership should be very proud of what they put together here. Next slide focuses on our business plan. We're in the 2nd year of our business plan. We have a 2022 through 2026 business plan. Just like our mission, it has 3 real sections to that. Power supply section, forward-thinking services, and advocacy. Tonight I'm going to talk about a couple of those. One of the things I'll talk a lot about is resource adequacy and resource planning, something we're putting a lot of effort into this year, and I'll have several slides on that. Another business plan effort we're focusing on heavily this year is interconnection process, specifically the solar interconnections. I don't know how much you've seen that yet in Columbus, but we see a lot of communities have a lot of rooftop solar coming in, and it's more and more each year. And it's becoming a pretty big burden for utilities and your energy service managers to track these. It's often a lengthy process from the time they decide they're going to put this solar in to getting the local permits, the financing, insurance that they need, and then sign-offs to the process until you test it and go online. Once they're tested and go online, if that house is sold, the new owners are supposed to have insurance on that. So they're all things to track. So to help with this, we're looking at software that all the utilities could have access to help have an online system where people could apply for that rooftop solar and then send out the notices and be at a workflow system to help manage that process. Today we have, well, a couple of years ago, we had about 300 on the system. Today we have over 1,200 rooftop solars on the system. And if you look at the curve, I expect that to be, in the thousands in the upcoming years. And it may be something you don't see a lot today, but it doesn't take much for that to really flip. A solar installer comes to town and starts going door to door, and you can quickly have tens or hundreds of applications there. Along with that, we've come up with a best practices manual. A group of members got together and just talking about best practices to manage those solar rooftop installations. And then finally, another big focus this year is staff development. We have a lot of staff that are within 5 years or so of retiring. If you look at Mike Peters, our CEO's direct reports group, he has 5 people direct reporting to him, and that group together has 200 years of combined experience. We have a lot of experience there, and we want to make sure that when that group starts retiring, we have people as needed to be able to carry out our mission. Next slide talks about one of the most important things, power costs. Important to everyone. We've had very stable power costs and very competitive with the investor-owned utilities in Wisconsin for several years now. Last year, 2022, we saw a pretty big uptick due to the events of 2022, the biggest one, war in Ukraine, driving gas prices up, and also some other supply constraints. Raised prices up quite a bit in 2022 as we went into the end of the year and budgeted for this year. We anticipated prices would stay higher. Fortunately, when we got into 23, we saw gas prices significantly drop. Prices last year were 100% over budget in the wholesale market, so what we could buy off the wholesale market. This year, we saw that return to normal. So we've been running about 10% under budget this year, and that money flows back to you in our power cost adjustment. Brought us right back in line with some historical years. Next slide, resources, shows a little bit about our diverse, competitive, and responsible portfolio. And this is one of the reasons we saw wholesale market prices double, but our prices only went up about 10% last year. It's because of this diverse portfolio. It shows our difference in fuel mix from 2010 to 2022. We have about 431 megawatts of owned resources, and something that we've done since the inception of WPPI is don't have any resources more than 10% of our total needs. It gives us that diversity to make sure we have a stable power supply, cost, and reliability. We have a lot of future capacity needs coming up as we're rolling off some contracts, but they're very manageable. So this is something that we're focusing on heavily this year, is planning what resources we should be looking into the mix in the next several years, and decreasing our usage of coal, along with what most of the utilities in the state are doing. The diversity can be seen in this next slide, where you look at where we have our power plants. Way up on the top, we have Boswell, which is a coal plant. Several wind scattered throughout the territory, some in Iowa, some in Illinois, and some in Wisconsin. And I'll talk a little bit more about that on future slides of why we have some of that diversity. A lot of it comes from different transmission constraints we see and different wind profiles in different areas. And then some natural gas in Wisconsin, along with Point Beach Nuclear and our newest addition, Point Beach Solar, 100 megawatts of solar panels around the Point Beach Nuclear plant. As you've probably seen, this next slide, environmental response. WPPI is targeting carbon neutral by 2050. This is something that all the utilities in Wisconsin have stated as a goal. We're on track for a 45% reduction in CO2 from our 2005 levels by 2025. Now, 2005 may sound like an odd year to track, but that's what all the utilities are using as a base year when we compare where we are on carbon emissions. Now, we're on a good track for that. We have solar, we have wind, and probably we'll be adding some more of that in the future. Fortunately, we're at a time where those are not only the carbon-free resources, but the lowest cost resources. We're keeping a keen eye on that right now because we know getting to carbon neutral has to be cost-effective also. And we also realize that there's not the technology out there to do that today. So by 2050, to make this happen, there's going to have to be some new technology and some changes in what's available to supply our power. But we're keeping a close eye on that and trying to stay on track so we can meet those needs and use those new technologies as they come about. Next slide, I talk about I have slides on some of the challenges when we talk about renewables. And this is an interesting slide showing our Point Beach solar output on a sunny day in summer, where you can see it hits 100 megawatts early on and flattens out. Then we have a intermittent day where it looks like a patient having a heart attack there, up and down, up and down. And then a cloudy day where you have almost no output. So when you don't have sun out, you have to have some other resource to back that up. And that's one of the challenges of putting too much of this on the system. You can have some and you can follow that, but if you get too much on the system, you're going to have a lot of gas units to back that up if the sun's not shining. Then we look at the next slide, talks a little bit more about seasonal variability. Summer, we see 100 megawatts out of that Point Beach solar. Winter, just because of different angles of the sun, we see quite a bit less, and it's darker, less light during the day, so a lot less. And then one more slide showing our wind resources. This is our Butler Ridge wind output. And again, very variable. A windy day, you see a pretty steady 50 megawatts once we got to the afternoon in this case. And then you have an intermittent day and a low wind day. So again, challenging to follow that. Great resources, very low-cost resources, but right now they work for part of our portfolio. They couldn't be our whole portfolio. So that's what we're doing on power supply, a lot of planning there. Looking at this next slide, another way we're keeping costs down is refinancing. WPPI refinanced these 2023 A bonds this year, started that process in 2022. So we were able to refinance $112 million of bonds, saving close to $1 million a year into the future. So that goes right back into reducing rates. We're looking right now through another bond refinancing that may happen this year or next year. So that is my presentation. One last slide, just talking about our continued strength in joint action. We have a lot of very active members at WPPI, and it's great to see. We're getting great direction on where they would like WPPI to be, and we're headed that way. Going to continue on track, focusing on reliable power, affordable and responsible, keeping that all of those in mind as we change our portfolio over, and then continuing to set the standard as a joint action agency that others in the nation are wanting to emulate. Any questions for me on any of those things?
I had one question, and I don't really know how to frame it. You kind of touched on the residential solar.
Yeah.
And in the last couple of years, I've noticed that there's a lot of marketing coming out to residences in the mail, online, et cetera. And I'm not really sure what that looks like for a Columbus resident. I mean, I understand that you need to supply us power, but when you're putting solar into the grid, there's long-term agreements, et cetera. So what does that look like for the average resident that's thinking about it right now in Columbus?
There's I could talk a lot about different angles on that. To start out, one of the best things I think the utility can do is put good information on your website so that people wondering about this have the facts of what it really costs. There are some cases where solar makes sense for them, rooftop solar. There's some where it doesn't. And the salespeople are really good salespeople. And they can sometimes make a case looking better than it is. So you hate to see your customers taken advantage of, doing something that hurts them and you. Another thing that's being worked at the legislative level is trying to get rates set up so they're properly compensating you. Right now, if someone puts in too much solar, that burden cost goes on the other ratepayers because they're not paying their share of the lines to their house and those type of things. So getting rates set up correctly is very important, getting your customer charge properly allocated. And that's an important part of that.
It seems like things are still in motion, though, but I mean, I recall about 4 or 5 years ago where it almost seemed like it was impossible to do like residential solar if you had a municipality like us or a smaller utility. And I get the reason for it to a certain degree, but I just see so much marketing right now that I would assume there's going to be a lot of curious people that
Yeah.
may want to get into it. Do we have anybody in Columbus that
We
has?
do.
Okay.
We have 5 residential customers currently right now that have solar.
Okay.
And you see, and the utility has the solar panels out by
Yep.
the
And it does-
administration building. We really encourage all of our customers, because of what you said, with just the salespeople, we really encourage them to get in contact with us. We get them in contact with our energy service manager, Anna. We constantly are putting stuff on our website, but it's always ask before you commit.
Yeah.
And make sure you got the correct information. And so that's our big push is.
Yeah, there are cases where it makes sense, but you want to make sure that they're not getting taken advantage of, and they're really putting it in for the right reasons. And having your rates set up correctly, so if they think they're putting something in and going to get paid a certain rate for 20 years, they actually get that.
Yeah.
The rates don't change.
Thanks for that. And that was my main concern, I think, when you see some of the marketing of it pays for itself over 20 years. Well, that depends on a lot of different things.
It's hard to tell what the world's going to look like in 5 years, much less 20.
Yeah,
So That's
exactly.
a long term for a payback, yeah.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
I just had a
Go ahead,
question.
Joe.
A couple weeks ago, because we get the WPPI news thing, and there was a brand-new nuclear power plant that had been opened up within the States, the United States. I can't remember where it was. And then there was another article on one that had been refurbished in
Yep.
order to, is,
Is nuclear in the mix?
I mean, it should be, in my estimation. It's the most efficient, cheapest power source that's out there. And it is safe.
It's safe, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
There's a new technology out there called small modular reactors.
Yeah, and that got discussed,
It's
yeah.
very exciting. It's a whole different type of technology than what we've had in the past. Extremely safe. Their gravity, gravity shuts them down if something goes wrong. It's how it's designed. And the one we looked pretty closely at getting into a project like that. Ultimately, we found out the cost was so high, it was going to increase rates way too much right now.
Okay.
But I think it is an answer. It's got to be an answer in our mix. It's just a matter of getting some of these out there. Washington is where they're doing this first testing case. Getting a couple out there and getting the cost down, and I think then it will start happening.
I was just glad to see a brand-new one.
Right.
Having been built and then going online, so.
Yeah, it's great to do, but we don't want to be the one paying the 5 times
Well,
normal
right,
price
right.
to be the prototype.
Right.
But I think at some point, it'll make sense
Yeah.
here.
All right, thanks.
Any other questions for Phil while he's up?
Okay, well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you for the presentation. All right, we'll move on to item number 3 then, which is proclamation for 2023 Public Power Week. This is something that I know happens every year in the city of Columbus. Bring attention to our utilities. Any discussion or? We can approve that this evening then, correct?
Yes.
All right. If there's no further discussion, I'll take a motion to approve the 2023 Public Power Week proclamation.
I make a motion to approve the 2023 Public Power Week proclamation.
I'll second that motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. We can do a voice vote on that, correct? Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. On to item number 4 then, water utility simplified rate application. I will turn that over to, okay.
Okay, so we talked in the past at the commission meetings about looking into our water rates. Our last water rate adjustment was in July of 2019, I believe, yes. And so we did research to see if we would qualify for a simplified. If you're out more than 5 years of a full rate case, you do not qualify. We were in that 5 years. So we do qualify, and as you see, that was in your packet. It's a small application. You put in the numbers from your annual report information, and it tells you if yes or no you qualify and for how much. These can get simplified, water rate applications can get turned around in about 120 days, which is great, where a full rate adjustment, as we're in the process of the electric, can take up to 9 months. So if the commission, and if, as you see on the insert of your packet, that's the actual form that I have filled out. It states that we would qualify for an 8% rate increase that accumulates to $126,516. If the commission does approve this and I can file it November 1st, the rate could potentially go into effect February 1st. If the commission approves it and it's submitted, obviously the Public Service Commission has they'll review and have the last, approval on this. Our rates our current rates can't sustain what we have now as far as inflation, to keep up with the quality of maintenance and infrastructure that we do. And after looking at the numbers and then putting them in, it's kind of telling us we need to adjust.
Reagan, did you have a question?
Nope.
What was the adjustment in 2019, do you remember? That wasn't a simplified rate?
No, that was a full rate case, and I want to say it was close to 8% on, wasn't it? Maybe 6%. I know it was single digits. But yeah, I don't have that information. I can definitely get that for you, though.
The other question I have, how do you figure where does the increase go in a regular bill, I guess? Does it go to the connection? Does it go to consumption?
It goes to consumption in a simplified, and I think maybe this doesn't have the detail. If you look on the back of what was in your packet.
Yep.
It talks about what's the existing and what the revised. That is usage. This will not change the customer charge. You're talking about that
Okay.
meter charge. This does not change that. A full rate adjustment would. It would be looked at. And this is straight across the board, where in a full rate adjustment, they look at each individual customer class, and it might be a little different. And you might have seen that in the electric. Right now, we're looking at different levels for different customer classes.
Okay.
So this would be just straight across the board.
Any other questions for Michelle?
I have one, because
Go ahead.
I'm trying to get my arms around this. So
Sure.
does 8% cover the full amount needed, or would it?
It's going to help. So like I said, that 8% would give us that $126,000. Because when percentage to actual dollars, it's not a large amount, but it will definitely help. It will sustain us, for next year. It will, and we can see, this is something we should look at every year of where our rates are at and see when the time is to do another full rate study.
Thanks.
By doing the simplified rate case now, then, does that impede our ability to do a full study, or do we have to wait X amount of years or anything for that?
No.
Okay,
I believe it's 1 year.
okay. Go ahead.
Is there any downside to doing it as a simplified rather than a full?
Downside, no, I would say it's more advantageous, and because it's a quicker turnaround to be implemented, and the cost, there's cost when you do a full rate study and a full rate adjustment application. You pay an outside third party to do that for you. A lot of times it's your auditors or your auditing firm, and then you pay the Public Service Commission for their time. Give you an example right now with electric. We're in WPPI helps out with electric, so we don't have that third party cost. But right now at the Public Service Commission, we are billed about $7,000 so far for that. So this saves that you don't have any of those costs. So I don't see a downside. It might not be exactly, the percentage we need, but this was even more than I thought it was going to be, so I was pleasantly surprised.
Thank you.
I have a quick question for you. So you were saying this increase helps us get there because our target is like that 5% rate of return, right?
Correct.
So does it get us to the 5% or not, or almost there?
Almost.
Okay, what's it get us to?
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, last year we came in, I had it, from the last meeting, I believe when Jody was here, we were only at, what was the water, 3?
2.83.
2.83, yeah. So it would get us to the, and I think that's right in here.
It
Number
wasn't clear if it would get us to the 5%
It gets
or
us, I
not.
think, to the 4.2.
Okay,
So it is getting us there.
perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Sorry about that. On line 7. it
Yes,
says what it-
correct. I
of-
wasn't
of
sure,
the
I know I
applic-
seen
Of the
it.
application.
Okay.
It has on
Yep.
where it gets you to, so.
So logistically, we need to approve this application, and then wait.
Yep, if you approve this application, then I can proceed to file it with the Public Service Commission. And then there's a little bit of a timeline where I would have to send out the notice and then wait so many days. It's 45 days after you send out the customer notification to put the rate into effect, and that's why it would go to the February 2nd,
Okay.
or the February 1st, I'm sorry.
All right, I don't have any more questions, I guess, if anyone wants to make any motions.
I move that we approve the water utility simplified rate case application.
I second the motion.
All right, we've got a motion and a second to approve the water utility simplified rate application. Any discussion on the motion? If there's no discussion, could we take a roll call, Michelle?
Oh, sure. Andler? Beckham?
Aye.
Hammer?
Aye.
Tome?
Aye.
Curtis?
Aye.
Rule?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. All right, on to item number 5 then, which is the water fluoride treatment discussion. Michelle, do you want to head it off, or do you want Jake?
Well, Jake and I had a few discussions on this, and I asked him to put together a memo, do some research on it, so I will hand it over to him. Do you want any of this information? Okay.
So in Columbus, right now, currently, we're mandated between 0.6 to 0.8 milligrams per liter of fluoride addition for the water. That's what our range has to be within. And currently, we're getting naturally occurring fluoride anywhere from 0.2, and I've seen it up to over 0.6. So currently, our pumps are on the lowest possible setting that is still accurate pumpage, just to stay within our limits. And it just fluctuates every single day. So just looking for any sort of feedback from you guys if we can move forward with potentially getting rid of fluoride addition for the city. Roughly in Wisconsin, there's 11,500 public water systems currently in the state, 190 cities, 1,250 towns, 413 villages. There's over 1,000 community systems, and approximately only about 200 cities are adding fluoride currently. It's a non-mandated by the Wisconsin DNR. It's just the dentists and everyone else used to want it more, but back in, I think I had it somewhere on there.
You want to start looking for a date
Yeah, there's a date.
on here?
But back in like the 80s and 90s, fluoride addition was at 2.0 milligrams per liter. Now it's down to 0.6, and they're looking at lowering it again just because of everything has fluoride in it now. I gave you some sources of fluoride, which I can state some of them. Obviously, toothpaste and mouthwash, black tea, coffee, grapes, potatoes, soda, cheddar cheese, beef, shrimp. Basically anything you can think of, there's traces of fluoride in it now. And I, just with our levels currently of naturally occurring, I just don't see the need to keep having that at extra cost. It's not a lot. I think I said it's right around $250 a month in fluoride, which is not a lot in the grand scheme of things, but it's a cost savings. With pumps, all the pumps are getting old, tanks and everything else, so.
And the chemical room, or
Oh, yeah, and then another positive, getting rid of fluoride. The DNR's pushing for separate chemical rooms for every chemical, and especially at Plant 1 and Plant 2 that we have here in town, fluoride's right next to chlorine, and they don't like each other when they're mixed together, so there's a hazard there. So the DNR pushes to get separate chemical rooms, which would just be, in the upcoming years, added costs of more rooms. Not sure where we would put them at our current locations, or how it would be feasible, but that's what they're pushing for.
Thanks, Jake. So my understanding then, if we've got 3 groundwater wells, there's a separate injection system for the fluoride at each well then?
Yep, so at each well, Plant 2, there's just a big chemical room and then pumps and tubing, and it runs right up to the, right before the reservoir. It's tapped in and then it pumps into there, and then it mixes in the reservoir, obviously. Plant 1 is basically the same, scales and pumps, and then it runs down like 50 feet into the pipe, and then it goes into the reservoir.
So when you say that we have an average of natural occurring fluoride, does that differ from one well to the next?
It's pretty consistent
Is it?
currently. At Plant 1, there's 2 wells down there, and they run simultaneously together, so it's pulling in kind of different sides of the water plant, but it's the same aquifer.
Okay.
And then Plant 2 is a completely different aquifer, and that's where we see higher levels of fluoride of the 0.6 to 0.7 almost.
Okay. Well, I tried to do some research, and I thank you for putting research sources in here, and I'm a little torn on this one. They first started fluoriding municipal water back in the late 40s, I think. I get that it's a natural occurring substance, but I kind of feel like we've done it for that long for a certain reason, for oral health care, where certain third world countries can't afford to do it. They're putting it in milk or salt or other things. But I just can't help but feel that there's some sort of public health obligation that we've continued to do this for. I don't know when we first started fluoride in Columbus. Do we have a record of that?
There may be somewhere, I mean.
It's been a long time.
When I started back in '79, they were adding.
I do know there's been multiple cities lately getting rid of fluoride just due to the natural occurring and everything that has fluoride in it now. So it is not just a random trying to get rid of it. Most cities are trying to get rid of it currently just because of the constraints of 0.6 to 0.8 and natural occurring. So it's just harder to keep within those ranges.
Sure.
and more it's in commercial products everywhere, where back in the day it wasn't.
I appreciate the resource materials too. I had a chance to check out some of them. I'm in favor of keeping the community water fluoridation program. big part is that consistency you talk about between pumps. And actually CDC's is suggesting 0.7%. So to go ahead and get that level of consistency throughout the community, I think is a good step. And American Dental Association still advocates for it. CDC does as well. It does great in tooth decay across all economic strata, and it's a good program in my opinion. And like you said, we've been doing it for decades. I think it's a community health responsibility.
I was just kind of surprised that we didn't have any representation from our dentist. Last time we talked about this, when Jack was on board, they came out in full force and very much against removing it. I guess things are different now or whatever, but for the savings, I don't know. I mean, like these guys are saying, it's a service, but at the same time, it definitely would be probably ultimately more of a savings than just the $250, because like you said, you're gonna have less wear and tear on your pumps. You're gonna, the chemical separation thing. So I can see it either way, especially if we're at the levels that we need to be at.
Tina, go ahead.
Thanks for putting all the information together, Jake. I appreciate it. To me, it's helpful to know that we have the natural occurring fluoride here. If we do decide to keep it, is dilution a solution for you as far as being able to pump at a low enough rate that you can stay within that range?
So we'd have to, if you want to get it, we'd almost have to get new pumps that are going to be at lower settings so that we can put it back down to that. Because right now we're from, I don't know, early 2000s, the pumps, maybe late 2000s. But they're from when we're not having any natural occurring fluoride, so we were pumping a lot more then. Now we're into the red on the stroke settings, which I think is not accurate anymore, and it's very inconsistent. You can look at the water data and say you pumped 250,000 gallons yesterday, and then a couple days later you'll pump 250,000 gallons, and the two numbers are completely different, just because it's not at the accuracy point of the pumps.
Laura?
How long have we had, like naturally occurring at the levels you have noted here? How long have you been tracking that?
So when I started in 2018, I think I just started, we had it then, and it wasn't as high. I remember it was like, there's some days where we'd almost have to like turn the pumps off just because it'd be at 0.8, and you just can't pump. I don't like getting it above the recommended level, so I would just unplug the pumps for the day. But it's been more consistent over the last probably 2 to 3 years of within that 0.4 to 0.6 milligrams per liter range for the past 2 to 3 years.
Thanks. I'm of the opinion that if we have a regular natural amount at those levels on a consistent basis, that we don't have to continue adding it.
One thing that Jake said that kind of just, you said a few years ago, we weren't at the level we're at now. So how is that affected in a well, where there is no fluoride or there is a higher level of fluoride? That's where I feel like monitoring it and
Predict future fluoridation levels.
exactly, I think that's probably and it's not just me as a parent or as a person. I think about public schools that we're supplying water to them, hospitals, senior living facilities, et cetera, where, they might not be brushing their teeth or consuming light beer or eating, anything on the list. I get that, but I just think that there's way too many factors to consider when we've done it for that long. What I was looking for on the sources was did the science change? Did something change where the recommendation is, let's not do this anymore? And I didn't find that anywhere. I mean, I found a few strange theories about a calcified pineal gland that showed up, and that was like the only thing, which you can remediate by chanting and meditating. I just don't feel like eliminating it is the best choice, but that's just based upon, I'm looking for a sign to say that we don't need to do this anymore. And my concern is that the well may be producing a certain level at this point, and maybe it's our metering devices or our pumps that aren't up to standard, as opposed to 5 years from now, all of a sudden the fluoride level drops. And I feel like we have a responsibility to deliver good quality, healthy drinking water. And I think the optics are good personally. I know that you just won a water quality award with the state, and I think continuing to do what we've always done is a good path for us. But I get it, we're at the point now where you have to kind of reinvest in it if you're going to continue to do it, that it's not just the cost of the fluoride, it's the equipment, so. Reagan, did you have a?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think some of the other interesting information that I found from your resource materials that you shared with us is that combination effect of the water fluoridation program with the toothpaste and the other products that it's in is actually ADA and CDC, both consider that to be the optimal way to service or provide fluoride, that just relying on natural occurring levels or product-based fluoride consumption isn't ideal for, the health impacts that we're looking for with the program. So I full throat endorse the program to continue.
You were first, I think. Go ahead.
Just through the years, and then having watched other communities that some that have never fluoridated, and others that have, over the years gotten rid of theirs, and they've not had increase of tooth decay or any issues in their communities. And
What's the source on that, Joe?
I can't.
Studies about tooth decay. I didn't see anything about that.
I'm just saying that there are communities out there that have never fluoridated, and
I just didn't see any studies about when folks remove the fluoridation that it doesn't negatively impact. I didn't see anything about that, so.
It's I don't have the direct paper or direct articles or that in front of me. It's coming from communities that they have said that we've not seen an increase since taking away fluoridation.
Well, I guess, is it something that we could do on a trial basis?
No. So with the DNR, it's either you do it or you don't. And then you gotta call the DNR and they gotta come check everything over again. So it's not like I can just unplug it and then plug it back in. It's mandated, since I do have fluoride, I'm required to have the pumps on currently, so it's not like we can just unplug it for a week and see where things are.
Well, I guess I meant for maybe if we were to stop doing it and still or how do I want to say, monitor the levels, and if it starts going down at that point, what would it be to start redoing it again? Do you have to apply for permit or something, or?
I would assume it'd probably be a permit or something with the Wisconsin DNR. I guess I didn't look at that part of that.
Okay.
To piggyback on your comment though, Brooke, I think part of what's hanging me up here is I keep hearing about the word transparency. And if this is something that we've done for 60 years and we're going to stop doing it, let's tell people we're going to stop doing it. And if the dentists want to come in here en masse and tell us that we're fools for doing it, I just don't feel like there's been a whole lot of conversation. This
Right.
took me by surprise, and I do feel like if there are concerns from the community about discontinuing doing it, that we should hear about those before we make that decision. I would feel much better.
And I know Jake did try to reach out to some local dentists, but he just couldn't get anything back.
Okay.
And maybe we could find out more details about the process that you just asked about, Brooke, like, what does it take to turn it back on if we have to turn it on?
Yep.
Like, what time frame,
Yeah.
what cost, what details, et cetera.
I'd like to learn more. And if, we have to put a notice in the utility bill for a rate increase, let's notify people that we're not gonna be fluoriding water in the future and see what kind of feedback we get. Sandy, go ahead.
Jake, would it be possible for you to put together like a table showing us over a period of time the fluoride levels at each of the wells?
Yeah.
So that we can compare what those levels are to the recommended level and see that over time?
Yeah, I can, once a week or twice a week, we can grab a sample from the raw and make a data table
Right.
for you guys.
That would be helpful.
Yeah.
That would be helpful.
Pretty important.
I just thank you for your information.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Bringing this
Thank you,
forward,
Jake.
Jake. It's a good discussion.
Yeah, thank you. So I don't know what,
Do we want to table this for a future meeting then?
why don't we just do that so we have it in the record? Yeah. I'll make a motion to table the discussion for the water fluoride treatment to a future meeting when we have data to look at.
Perfect.
Anybody want to second that?
Well, I'll second that.
Motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion?
Wait, who made the motion?
I did.
Okay.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We'll table that for the future. Thank you. And thanks for all your work on that, Jake.
can-
Appreciate it.
Yes, if you could stay.
I'll try to slow down a little bit and give Michelle some time to open her pages now because we're going to talk about the 2024 CWL budget discussion. I'm sure, is this the first review?
Yes, well, we looked at the capital projects and additions at the last meeting. A few of them have changed. That's your last schedule. Let me grab my folder here. Yep, 35, page 35 of your packet was looked at last month. There have been a couple changes to that, so when we get to that schedule, we'll talk about that. Just a few things before we start. We're in the process of an electric rate adjustment application, but our last rate adjustment was November 1st, 2012, it's 12 years ago. Our last water rate increase was July 15th of 2019. We also have in 2012 electric rate adjustment included the recovery of the 1% fund. It's called the EP3 fund. That's the programs we offer to our customers for electric energy efficiency program. That's 3 E's me. The PSC will not allow that discontinuation of the E3P until our next rate adjustment. And just to let you know, we are not looking to discontinue it. We're looking at adjusting it maybe a little. I've been working with Anna, our energy service manager, to go through that. In this budget, we're anticipating approximately a 5% increase in wages and salaries. And with that said, health insurance is looking at an increase of 12.9%, and dental insurance is looking at a 4% increase. School benefits are maintained due to Jake Van Ness and Mason Mosier being electrical apprenticeship in the program. We also have Adams Columbia Electric Cooperative. They buy capacity from us in sub 4, which is equivalent to, you'll see that in the other, rents, AT&T and Charter have pole attachments, and those increase 3% per our contracts. So that's increased revenue that you'll be seeing. And them were the highlights. So, we'll get right into it. after doing this budget and plugging in these numbers and reaching out and getting, defining numbers, I do a spreadsheet to make sure that our expected, because we do have a bond out there, we have to make sure our debt service coverage is over 1.25%. With this budget, we are at 4.6% if everything stays within the budget. So that's one good thing to know. Wanted to let you know. So our bond we took out in 2016 for the James Street project. For the water, the bond payments will be done in 2036. And for the electric portion, they will be done in 2026. So we are seeing the light at the end of the tunnel for the bond. But by then, we'll probably have to borrow again. Just the, yes, friendly warning. So if we look at the first page, Schedule 2 at the top, this is your electric revenue and expenses. I did increase the revenue a small amount. We don't know where exactly the rate adjustment's going to come in, and hoping that it comes in right after the first quarter of 2024. So we'll at least get 3 quarters of the new rate. So just a minor increase to be conservative. I also, so we just talked about the rents. In the other operating revenues, we have, that's the majority of it, and that's those 3. That's the capacity for Adams Columbia and the pole attachments, which is a small increase, but it's good revenue resource. So now if you go down to the third section, which is the operating expense, I just want to let you know that group is a summary of the detail that's on Schedule 3. So if you look at Schedule 3, it brings those operating expenses forward into a summary type category. So when you're looking at a certain account, if you want more detail, you can go to Schedule 3. It breaks it out even more. If you want more detail, I do have my budget workbook, which has notes in it. Typically, utility budgets don't fluctuate very much from year to year, except for inflation and increases. Your expenditures are pretty similar from year to year, unless you have a major event, which we do not, which is good. Good and bad. So then if you go down below that, you'll see the non-operating revenues. This is the interest income, interest expense, and that brings us down to our net income. For the budget year of 2024 for electric, we are looking at a net income of a positive $381,000 and $420. It's actually up 146% from last year. We had a lot of maintenance items that were done last year. They're not typical yearly items. In 2023, we had quite a substantial roof repair replacement, which is a maintenance item. I know you had some time to look at this. I want to answer any questions you have, and I don't want to say too much to confuse anybody. So if there's something you see that you would want me to go further in depth, then I'm happy to do so.
Go right ahead.
The one question I had was under the operating expenses, and maybe I haven't looked at Schedule 3 enough, but there's 133.52% decrease.
Where, 109.
Customer accounts expenses. Am I reading that right?
Yeah, let me look. No, that's actually the sales expense. And
I'm
what that
sorry.
is that's where that E3P expenses goes. So it's really, we had some big projects in 2023. A lot of our large power and I think one of our industrial customers had a program. So that is an expense in there, but it also kind of runs through that E3P fund. And I don't know if you remember when Anna came in and you were capping them at $50,000, you know, you were moving those caps around for, and it really, that we feel was an exceptional year. We had quite a few come in because it really slowed down in 2020 just because, you know, with the COVID era. Customers are coming back and we're starting to see more additions, more upgrades, but we see that tearing off. So we had, when the school did their revamp, you know, they got into some programs. I believe it was American Packaging, and they're going through one again. I want to say, was it Lyco? So there was manufacturers. So we consider 2023 exceptional. After talking with Anna, looking back at the years, we tried to, this is about what we project will come in for those. So that's why it's down.
Thank you.
You're,
That amount of $27,400, though, is what we're expected to collect with the decrease.
no,
No.
that's what we're expecting to spend
Okay.
on the programs for customers and residents.
Is the fund larger than that, though?
Well, yes, I mean, right now, what we have in our E3P fund, just wait, I can tell you, it's in your packet.
It used to be in a pie chart somewhere, but.
Yeah, no, yeah, we
Probably
don't,
still.
yeah, we don't do those anymore.
Yeah.
Let me see, currently it's at $173,000.
Okay, but-
So if more would come in, right, we
Okay.
would definitely be able to fund them.
Okay, all right, thank you.
It's just kind of a budgeting.
Sure, yep.
Purpose.
And that's like a self-sustaining fund, right?
Light,
That's correct. That's where we talked about 1% of the revenues gets put in that fund. So it's always being funded.
on this page, Michelle?
Yes.
The capital projects?
Yes.
Is that just for the water and light utilities, or are there any items on here for wastewater?
And I was gonna, this is just water and light.
Okay,
We have been working on the sewer budget. It has just been tweaked, and as of today, and I just didn't feel, I felt that was too soon to get to you, to have time to look at. So between Katie and Crystal and I, Crystal took the lead. The sewer is gonna be coming over to the utilities, so I was more involved this year. And Crystal will plan on being here in October to present that, so it will still look a little different. It will look like, the previous, but going forward, we'll get it more into one workbook.
okay, thanks.
Yes.
So are you looking for any official action from us tonight, just for input or any
Yep,
questions?
any questions, any suggestions, if something looks out of place or adjustments, take any kind of feedback you have. I wanted, you to have time to look at this, to understand it, to reach out to me anytime for any type of more detailed explanation. Coming back in October, probably looking for some action. I did get the breakdown from the city, their dates, because after the commission does approve the budgets, they do have to be ratified by the city council. So we like to keep it, within their time frame. So we'll be looking at October. And I know that'll be I'll have the sewer budget out to you before then, so you'll have plenty of time to look at it and reach out to me if you have questions. It would be great if we could at the October meeting to approve. we could always hold a special meeting, but November will be, because I think theirs is November 7th. It's before ours. So if we can't in October, we might, if something needs to be adjusted or changed, we might have to hold a special meeting just to get this to stay within the city council's timeframe.
So
If that's okay.
Your target is the first meeting in November for council to approve?
Yeah.
Okay,
And we'd like to have ours with that.
sure.
And I'm assuming that's
Well, wouldn't
also nationally, sorry. That's also nationally election day,
Oh,
and I don't know if there's anything
are there?
at this point, so we may actually have to change our meeting date, so I need to
Might go to
talk with
Monday.
Pat Gable on that.
Is that your public hearing date? What, or that's before that? Because ours doesn't go with,
October 10th is the
Okay.
public hearing.
okay. Because I know ours doesn't have to be, ours just doesn't go with a public hearing. We
Right.
don't have to do that, but we do want it approved. So as you're looking at this, as I explained the electric, the water revenues are the same. You know, your top part is your operating revenues. Again, I increased it a little bit, you know, hoping that we'll be putting in that simplified. Again, that middle section, that operating expense, more detail on Schedule 5, brings that summary back into Schedule 4. And then, again, you have your non-operating revenues. It's set up similar to the light budget, trying to keep it consistent. I don't see any major events. I see it as being another typical year. As Michael pointed out with the capital projects and additions, some of these projects, they're big ticket items and they're not yearly items, but some of these are maintenance items and are in those detailed line items.
Were there any changes to that capital
Oh, yeah.
projects and additions that you wanted to go over?
Yes.
I think you mentioned that at the beginning.
I did.
Perfect.
Yes. The last one you looked at, they had a joint replacing of a pickup truck for electric and water. Wastewater is looking at purchasing a new vac jetter truck, and it's going to be split. Wastewater will have 40%, DPW, water, and light departments will have 20%. So we removed the pickup truck, feeling that we could get one more year. It's a 2015, so 2025 is 10 years, and that's our replacement, so we would just need to put new tires on it. So we were able to take that $75,000 because a jetter truck it's almost $600,000. So what you're seeing in here, that first line item is the electric and water 20% portion. So that had changed. The other thing that had changed, we had a meeting with Forrester Electric. They do a lot of our electrical plant projects, and we, in that bottom section in the electric, the second line item, the transruptor to be installed at the substation. This project was kind of started last year. We have all the inventory items. They were just coming in randomly because of just the delivery part of it. So, but to have a contractor come in, lay the concrete, hook it up, we had 50,000. After meeting with Forrester, they suggested we up that to 80,000 because they will have to do the engineering part of it. They'll put out the bids for it. So there was like a $10,000 for that we didn't have in there. So that item changed. And then, and I skipped one other item changed. In the middle section, the water utility, the second line item, and I didn't have this in there. Right now, we are having Ruckert and Milky Engineering looking at the reservoir overflow rehabilitation. This was a deficiency that's required us to have this upgraded by,
End of next year.
yeah, it's January 1, 2025, so it has to be next year. So we finally got the numbers back. Jake got the numbers back for what it's going to take to get that up to the expectation. And we were quoted $105,000 to get that taken care of. We're hoping that can be capitalized, but it might be considered maintenance. And at Water Plant 1, we have to be very careful what we do there because if we do too much infrastructure, we lose our grandfather clause, and then we have to bring everything up to today's standards, which would be very expensive. So in Rooker and Milke have been looking at that for us, correct? They are aware of that. So, so those were the 3 items that changed on this report. No.
The only thing I would add, I guess, since we're going to continue to talk about the fluoride, is there anything reflected in this budget that would impact either way? I mean, are you assuming it's just going to go away?
Because it's such a small amount, if you're just thinking chemical savings, our chemical, if you look, so in the water, on Schedule 5, if you go down to the second group, water treatment expenses, chemicals, is 641. That's a very minor cost in the overall chemicals that we are required. So we didn't, we didn't increase it or decrease it because of that.
What about pumping equipment, like you said, things if they're not accurate, if they're not metering right? I mean, would it be worth just looking at rough expenses if we decided to continue, just to make sure that we're not going to
Absolutely.
go over budget, just to have that information?
Yes, I talked with our chemical distributor, just looking at other pumps for other chemicals as well, just because everything's getting old. And it's right around $700 to $1,000 per pump.
Okay.
So it's not gonna break the bank or anything.
And life expectancy about 20 years, maybe, you
Yeah.
think? Okay.
Because they sell like replacement parts and everything. All the old pumps now are past that point.
Sure.
So we're running on the spares that we have. So it's not like a major cost or anything.
And you just have the 1 at each plant?
Yes, we have fluoride, chlorine, and then orthophosphate. So three pumps at each plant.
They all use the same type of pump, essentially? Okay, all right. Great, thank you. Any other discussion or questions on the budget?
No, it looks like a good start.
Yeah,
Like every budget, start historically and go forward.
yep,
Absolutely.
Thank you guys for the work.
yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
There's nothing else, then we'll move on to reports. Utility report.
So, Mayor Joe and I went last week to WPPI's annual meeting, and one of the slides that was the program, it was purpose of leadership, right?
Leading with purpose.
Leading with purpose. So as we were there, the electric utility, and I'll pass this around, is celebrating 125 years. So we got a flag and our picture taken. Congratulations. Then we also received another award. This is the SEP award. This is given out every 2 years. It's Smart Energy Provider. Let me get my little cheat sheet. No, we did have it hanging on the wall and it slid off. Yeah, gotta put an anchor in that wall. But I'll tell you a little bit about. So we do the paperwork. Oh, sorry, you're right. So Anna is the go-to lead on this, putting all the information together. But it's American Public Power Association it's a designation from the American Public Power Association for demonstrating a commitment to and proficiency in energy efficiency, distributed generation, and environmental incentives that support the goal of providing safe, reliable, low-cost, and sustainable electric service. They did give these awards out in New Orleans, and unfortunately, nobody attended. I was willing, but they did send us a video of the program where they named all the communities, so that was pretty exciting. Other than that report, I gave you the staffing update where we're at, but we feel we're in a good place.
Great, congratulations, good job.
I'd just like to piggyback off of Michelle's comment is APPA is obviously the, state's memberships of like a WPPI. And Wisconsin is really leading in getting these awards. It says a lot for our state Yep, WPPI Energy and MEUW, and for our own people. So it's exciting. It's exciting to see.
Public
So.
utilities are a good investment.
Yeah.
They have investor privilege. I'm all in favor.
Anything else, Michelle?
No, that's pretty much all I had noted as of right now, unless anybody had any questions.
Seeing none, we'll move on to number 2, future agenda topics. Is there any suggestions for the next meeting for agenda topics? I watched the last utility meeting since I wasn't here.
Yeah.
And something that piqued my interest, and I think I brought up once before, and I don't know if it needs to be an agenda item, but since we're going through the budgeting process, I noticed that a lot of the designated or restricted funds from the sewer utility had to kind of be tweaked because of the audits.
Yep, that's correct.
I don't disagree with what I heard with at all, but there were things pounded into my head 8 years ago that made me believe that there were certain restrictions or bonding covenants that prevented us from doing that. But I think I mentioned once before, we have a depreciation account at the water and light utility, but we don't at the wastewater utility.
And
Is
that
that
is-
something that has been discussed administratively?
Yes.
Okay.
As we were going through the wastewater budget, Crystal, I, and Katie had talked quite a bit about that. That they do need like a replacement fund, a reserve fund, for future items. Because they hadn't in the past, and that's why the dollars had to be shifted around. But a designated account needs to be established with a certain amount. Like for our depreciation, I think we put in $5,000 a month. They need to establish, well, you would need to establish that, but we would come to you with a recommendation for starting to set up something like that. For, as they have equipment coming to age, they need to have that replacement fund.
I believe there were replacement, but they were so specific, it seemed like we couldn't spend them.
Yep.
And, unless there was this, like a pump replacement account. It's like every year we did the budget for wastewater. It was like, we're putting money away. But then until a project came up, we were just kind of setting it aside. But it seems like, the water utility and the electric utility have been able to keep up with small street projects in the last couple of years without borrowing. But the wastewater continually has to borrow. And I'm just wondering if we have more parity between the two, counting-wise, it would make more sense.
And that's why when Crystal was working with Jody from Baker Tilly to find out were there any restrictions, tight restrictions, or let's reclassify that to, like you said, one, so it doesn't have to specifically be a pump,
I just brought it up now because you're going through budget season and we've got new people on board, new administrators. So, I think if we can kind of
And because of,
do the same thing with all utilities makes sense to me. Yeah.
because of that happening with having to transfer that at the last meeting, that brought it all to light, that is definitely has to be, the investment accounts need to be looked at.
Okay. Well, I don't know if it would be appropriate for next meeting, but if there needs to be a conversation.
Well,
from
you know what's good
administrative
is
staff, please put it on the agenda so we
Yep.
can work on that because.
And it'll be good because Crystal will be here because of the wastewater budget, that she could give more detail on that. And then even maybe before then, we can meet and maybe come up with some kind of, plan moving forward.
Sure. Yeah, I just kind of heard part of that discussion, like, this makes sense, but it also reminds me of when I asked why we didn't have a depreciation account over there, and maybe there's a resolution, but if we can contribute to moving in a better direction, I'm all for it, so.
And speaking of that, and I will bring this up now, we talked about, and just a few of us, about soon the water tower needs to be painted. It's already flaking. It looks terrible. It's supposed to be scheduled in 2025. That's a maintenance item. It's not a capital item, so it comes right out of your budget. They've changed the requirements as to what kind of paint you use, and you have to sandblast it, and it went from $500,000 to about $1 million.
For a paint job?
Yeah, for a paint job.
Complete sandblast with the outside.
Okay.
So we talked about, and I know 2 years probably isn't long enough, but starting with something, putting a fund together, and then keeping that fund because the paint jobs are 10 years?
I remember the last time it was painted. It wasn't.
2015.
Yeah, not that
So
long ago.
10 years.
Yeah.
So in 10 years, you know, so if we start that fund and it's a constant,
Sure.
yeah, then it doesn't, you know, hit the book so hard. and
Yep.
So I'm going to put that on there too then.
Sure, if you know that that expense is going to occur every 10 years, it's pointless to be reactive at the last minute. Yes.
Right, right. It pretty much almost doubled.
Get it right
Okay,
down
so
and
water tower
Start getting
fund.
into water tower painting.
I don't know if I.
You're not gonna catch me hanging out.
All right. If there isn't anything else before we adjourn, I just wanted to thank Sarah Motif. She chaired
Yeah.
this commission since its creation. I know she couldn't make it here tonight, but, you know, she's a council member, and chairing another commission is a lot of work. So I appreciate the work that she's put in. I know she's not going to be here next month, that she's being replaced, so I just wanted to thank her for her time at the commission, so. All right, other than that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'll motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Stand adjourned. Thank you.